Hello, welcome to How to Play Bahama Taxi Online Edition, a game for 2 to 4 players. This game, of course, is available on Board Game Arena, and if you see this user, Ben DFW, go ahead and message him and say, hey, I'd like access to Bahama Taxi, and I'll add you. That being said, in this game, the Passenger from God rule is different than how you might normally play it. It is not on, so if a Passenger from God appears, you will not automatically get it. In fact, this is what it will look like. It'll look like you've driven past your passenger, and what you'll have to do on your next move, drive away and then drive back to collect that passenger if that's the passenger you want. This somewhat mitigates the amount of luck in this game. It makes it a little bit more fair. But in the future, we will have some variants where we will be able to turn that on and off. In addition to that, we will also do a 2-deck variant for an increase in player count. From instead of 4 players being the limit, we'll have up to 8 players being the limit. We'll also consider forced pickup. Right now, you can decline a passenger if you're trying to get a better valued passenger. We'll also do a mirrored variant where you can pick up the passenger from the destination point or the origin. We might do some different setups, like a start shift setup where you are dealt your origin card and a destination card, so basically you start with 1 passenger. We might even do a shift change variant where we do the same thing, but we start with the full cab for each player. We'll also, because of the 8-player configurations, consider double pickup rules, double drop-off variant rules, canceled ride passenger rules, where basically if you have the same exact card on top and bottom, say 2 ace of spades, if you go to the ace of spades, either it counts as 1 point or it counts as 0 and you get an additional turn after a new passenger is generated. So basically it's a placeholder if that does happen. So there's different approaches to each of those situations. We'll also be doing a 2-player edition where you control 2 cabs with 2 distinct spaces for cards. So you'll have 1 cab on one side, 1 cab on the other. You control either both of them at the same time or alternating turns, similar to the game Blockus or Blocus, however you want to call it, where you might control your piece and the player next to your opponent gets to control 1 piece and you control your other piece, then your opponent controls its other piece. So 2 different ways of doing that. We'll consider both of them. We're also considering doing a variant where you have 4 cards in hand and you get to exchange them either for the origin point of a passenger or the destination point of a passenger at any time of the game. And if you don't use those cards within the game, they don't count for anything. This would speed up the game significantly, especially for 4-player games, and add a bit of depth to the otherwise extremely simple game of Bahama Taxi. There's also a almost completely different game that I'm considering doing a video for, where instead of controlling a cab, you're controlling a smuggler. And as we just mentioned with that 2-player variant with controlling 2 different pawns, in this variant you'll have 2 different pawns. One will represent a smuggler and one will represent a police officer. The police officer does not pick up cards. He is there to try to stump your opponent. He doesn't block your opponent, he tries to arrest your opponent. If you are able to be caught by the police officer and you have cards in hand, you will lose those cards. And so this could either be smuggling bananas if we want a family-friendly Curious George type theme, or just smuggling drugs if we want a more adult setting. It's your choice. We're going to attempt to do a couple of games of that, see if it works. I think it would be a huge influencer, huge strategic increase in all sorts of strategy. The idea that you can control a police officer either simultaneously as your smuggler or alternating, as we mentioned earlier with the other 2-player variant. And I think it'd really send your opponent guessing, especially when you know the positions of every piece of contraband on the board. The only difference would be we'd all start at a 3 position, so the 3 cards would be eliminated from the game. And we'd also have a Pac-Man variant type thing, where a Pac-Man type rule, where if the police officer catches you, or you as the smuggler catch the police officer, your opponent's police officer, not your own obviously, it wouldn't count, but if you catch your opponent's police officer and you have no contraband in hand, that you'll be awarded with 2 cards fanned out from the discard pile of your choice. So basically a randomizer, and it gives you a contraband to deliver with a specific point value, just similar to Bahama Taxi with passengers. So definitely a different type of game. a little bit more depth to it, a lot of influence. When I was playing around with it, I noticed a lot of different things that can happen with it, and I think we'll do that. So we have a lot of different things to consider for the future. We're even considering doing a dice roll before each turn as a variant, where if you get 1, 2, or 3, you can move that many spaces. But if you get a 4, something else happens where you're able to move an opponent's cab anywhere you want. If you roll a 6, your turn gets skipped, and if you roll a 5, something else happens. You'll get skipped for your turn, and the next player in line gets to control your cab. So we're considering some ideas like that. We'll have some interesting variants, some different ways to play this game. And this game is still open to a lot of creativity, so if any of those things I just said inspired you to come up with some different games, let me know in the comments. So at the end of this Board Game Arena game, you get to see stats, you get to see all the player aids, and if you see this user, go ahead and send a message, say, hey, I want to try this game out. It doesn't matter if your account's brand new, you've never even played a game, you can be added. And I want to thank the musician today, Piano Man 58, for his Glenn Miller cover of, can't remember what the song was. It doesn't matter. Anyways, I want to thank him for that, and do come to Board Game Arena, attempt this game. Do message me if it's still in alpha by the time you see this. Hopefully it's in beta by then, and then hopefully that everybody can play it and try it out. Had a lot of positive feedback on this game, and hope everybody who's watching this video who's not subscribed will go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you next video.